Welcome, viewers and listeners, to the Total Football Analysis Serie A podcast. We are the Thinking Fans podcast. Each week, we get together with our squad, who are currently pro players, real coaches, academics, and smart technical analysts. My name is Chris Mumford, a professor of innovation at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm a former university goalkeeper and current cranky goalkeeper coach. For those of you that enjoyed Money Heist or La Casa de Papel, I am known as the professor. Bella ciao, bella ciao. We're joined by Loriana, or Lori, from Sofia, Bulgaria. A former sports journalist, she abandoned the press to exclusively focus on the fascinating world of tactics. A broker during the day and a TFA analyst at night, Loriana finds the time to occasionally travel to Italy to attend Atalanta's games. We call her Money because she is always on target. Shout out to Steve, who deserves a medal for waking up at 6:30 a.m. to discuss Italian tactics with us. Coffee and football analysis. What better way is there to start off a day? He is an analyst for the Wellington Phoenix, New Zealand's only pro club competing in the Australian A-League, as well as providing in-depth contributions to the TFA. He is known as the mailman because he is always up early and he always delivers. Finally, I would like to welcome my co-host, Daniele Pruch.
What's up, Chris? Serie A fans, benvenuti to the first episode of the Serie A podcast. My name is Daniele Proc. I'm a current professional footballer for North Carolina FC and freelance journalist. We are so thrilled to analyze what is arguably the most tactical league in the world, learn how Cristiano Ronaldo and Zlatan Ibrahimovic adjust to the cutthroat and, let's face it, sometimes dirty Italian defending, and figure out why is it that abroad there aren't many Italian footballers. In fact, the Chelsea squad at the turn of the millennium, with the likes of Zola, Vialli, Di Matteo, Dalla Bona, remains an isolated immigration pattern of Italian talented players. I guess that the Italian job is no longer for export, Chris.
What an era for Chelsea. The lifeblood was clearly Italiano.
But I can assure you that our analyses are as precise as Fabio Cannavaro's defensive challenges and as exuberant as Arrigo Sacchi's football in the late 80s and 90s. Sometimes we do get a little fired up, but we promise that, unlike Marco Materazzi, we'll always be considerate when tackling issues about the Serie A players.
We've received generous support from Total Football Analysis. They are the world's largest open source soccer analytics community. Please visit www.totalfootballanalysis.com and join and support the movement. Let's get the podcast started, or more appropriately, let's talk about the restart.
All eyes and ears these days have been on Vincenzo Spadafora, the Italian Minister for Sport, who recently threw June 13 and June 20th as potential dates to restart the league. But the Serie A tifosi will have to wait until the final decision, which will come this Thursday. As Spadafora said, May 28th is the day when we will know if the league will resume.
Assuming we resume, we're going to need a refresher on the standings. Steve, can you remind us of the situation at the top of the table?
Yeah, no problem. So right at the top, obviously we have Juventus tucking away nicely on 63 points, just in front of Lazio with 62. Inter, Atalanta following close behind in those Champions League spots, with run-ins to come that will make a difference in those top four spots for sure.
Good. And as far as looking at the other end of the table, Lori, can you chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have three teams that are currently in the relegation zone, which are Lecce with 25 points, Spal with 18 points, and Brescia with 16 points. But we have some teams that could go down the way to the relegation zone, and maybe we have Spal and Brescia who are surely going down in the Serie B, but for the third place, there are Sampdoria, Torino, Genoa, who are currently in a really dangerous position and could go down the same road.
And Lori, I know that you recently wrote a piece on TFA about Torino and their drop in performance. Do you think they will get sucked up in this scramble to not relegate?
Well, their momentum is not really good right now, and they've performed badly in their last 6-7 games. It all went down with their defeat to Atalanta. It was a huge. It was a huge
Setback.
setback. Yeah, excuse my English. And they started performing badly in defense. They couldn't find the balance between the lines, and I can honestly see them going down to the third relegation spot because they are with new coach. Maybe there can be a boost in performance, but it will most definitely continue the same way.
And let's jump on the other side of Turin. And let's begin with analyzing Juventus, the team that has been killing it for the past 8th season and is going for the 9th title in a row. Steve, how about you begin by unpacking what has changed in Juventus under Sarri versus under Allegri?
Okay, so just wanted to give you an overview of the possession. Obviously, Sarri has a big emphasis on having the ball with his teams, obviously at Empoli and at Napoli and obviously at Chelsea as well. But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of whether things had changed a lot at Juventus this year, obviously under his leadership, and whether there was now more style with the substance or whether it was more of the same from their perspective. So so far this year, they've used 25 games where they've used his diamond midfield that he loves so much. Obviously, the Dybala has been a big pivot point in that midfield there at the top of that diamond to support the good work that he's done. And then here's the lineup that he's used most regularly across the board. Obviously, they've had a couple of injuries that have dictated to potentially what he's done around the pitch, but that's the system that he's used most regularly until the last 10 games. And 8 of the last 10 games, he's switched into more of a 4-3-3 formation, and I think that's brought around the best of Higuain in that top number 9 position. So Dybala's dropped out of that pivotal 10 position. He shifted Higuain inside, and in the last couple of games, with Ronaldo especially missing a little bit through his injury issues, that Costa's come in and played on the right hand side of a front 3 as well. So a little bit of a change in the last 10 games. I don't know if you guys have noticed that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that Sarri is a fan of the beautiful game. So why don't we unpack the way that Juventus builds out of the back?
Yeah, absolutely. So just in terms of some stats, not a lot has changed really in terms of the genuine stats. So they've overperformed on the XG compared to where they should be by a small amount. They've had a few less counterattacks, which lends itself to Sarri's more possession status, and they've had an increased pass count and key passes in that build-up, like you talked about there, Danny. But there hasn't been a lot of change in quality. So let's look at exactly what that looks like for Sarri out there.
Sounds good. And Laurie, do you have any thoughts about Juventus? How has it changed with Maurizio Sarri?
Yeah, I've noticed that due to the more possession style of play, they became like more dull and not that creative anymore. It doesn't matter that they have Ronaldo in the team and Dybala, who's playing a lot better than in the previous seasons. They still seem a bit less creative and slowing down the tempo, which is something that they were previously said to be doing, but they've now really slow down the tempo and trying to build up through the different channels. And I've noticed that their creativity and their use of the wings has changed.
For sure, I think there's certainly more a methodical side under Sarri in terms of the way they do things. So just put together two key areas. So one thing that's fundamental to the way Sarri does stuff is the build up. You'll have seen multiple occasions across all the teams he's coached and managed where they build up from deep to create opportunities. And this is a pretty standard picture from their last game against Inter, where obviously Conte's Inter come and try and press them hard up the pitch to recover the ball. And here in this scenario, they're going to drag Inter to one side to then hurt them on the other side. So fullback in possession, playing directly into the centre of the pitch here in this instance into Costa, and now they're going to try and hurt them on the other side. So attracting Inter down to Juventus's right hand side here through a ball into midfield to attract midfield and pressure in there in the centre of the pitch, and then they're just going to shift the ball quickly to Sandro on the other side to give them time and space to carry the ball forwards into midfield. So this is a pretty regular occurrence from Sarri. He uses this a lot to create time and space for his teams to create opportunities higher up the pitch. I don't know if you guys noticed anything like that in the Inter game.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a feature of Sarri's 4-3-3, a formation he loved to use at Napoli, and he also loves to use Higuain. So switching to a 4-3-3, I'm sure it's something that Sarri has been thinking about because of the guy up top that he really likes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he struggled to get all three of his kind of most creative and dangerous forward players on the pitch at any one time. So shifting into that 4-3-3 has definitely helped him in that regard in the last 10 games or so.
I think that switch of play is really spot on because they really often use Alexandro on the left, who is really good with the ball and is holding on to the ball well and can quickly really advance the ball to the final third. So this one is a really successful one.
Sure. So the next clip actually, to your point there, Laurie, adds Sandro in. So here you'll see another example from the Inter game where Sandro's been in possession, and they're going to attract pressure towards him and provoke a press from Inter to then play through the pressure as opposed to round the pressure in the last slide there. So Sandro's going to play into midfield here to attract the midfield pressure. He's going to receive the ball back and then play beyond Matuidi there to the next line. And you'll see support beyond the ball into the central pivot, as Danny mentioned, Higuain there. So Sandro plays directly into Higuain's feet, and then we have the setback and the run beyond in a very kind of simple up, back and through, as people may term it. In some areas, it's something that Sarri uses a hell of a lot to get his players facing forwards in between those lines in a more advanced position, and it's something he uses an awful lot.
It's really interesting. The position of Matuidi is really interesting in here and all the whole tactical situation because, as we'll discuss later, his performance has changed compared to last season, and seeing his movement in this scenario is really interesting.
Yeah, so that helps Sarri's teams kind of move up the pitch to create opportunities to create and score. So here in the next slide, you're going to see all of the opportunities that Juventus have created so far this season. That number's 674 total shots, and they've scored 83 goals from those shots from 260 shots on target, which is a big number when you consider the difficulties it is to break teams down in Serie A, and most teams will come to Juventus and sit a little bit deeper and try and play on the counter. Ronaldo, Dybala, and Higuain, as you expect, have scored the majority of the goals. They share 51 goals out of 158 shots on target between them so far this year. So they do a large chunk of the legwork in the final third. And I'm sure, Laurie, you're going to discuss a little bit later about how important Dybala's been to that system so far this year.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that a bit later, but first, maybe we can explain what are Juventus' weaknesses because they do have some, and no matter that they're in the leading spot right now, it's not really secured, and we can see later on what are the reasons and can Lazio actually go to the first place.
Yeah, and before we do that, Steve, why don't you tell us exactly how different the mentalities of Allegri and Sarri are according to all the data that you've been providing us?
Yeah, sure. So the themes around Sarri in the final third, a big emphasis on combination play and individual excellence, as you'd expect with the type of players that he has at his disposal. And certainly in the last 10 games, they've played more off a central pivot to combine with forward runs from the wider players that he's used in the last few games. So I think his flexibility there kind of gives you an understanding about exactly the type of coach he is compared to Allegri. So here's just a couple of quotes for those watching as opposed to those listening. So for those listening, I think the reality about Allegri is that in his world there is no right way or no wrong way of football. There's only winning and losing, and I think it's really important to understand that it wasn't always about beautiful football with him, or whatever people say beautiful football might be. His thing was about making sure they won on a regular basis, and creating that juggernaut that is Juventus in the last few years has been about his ruthless nature. It's a very un-Italian way where you'd expect them to be more system-based. His thing is about having good players and making sure those good players make the difference. Whereas with Sarri, obviously, he likes his teams to control the game with the ball. He likes to play in the opposition half. He likes the team that he's coaching to attack as much as he can, and he takes great pride in the way his teams attack. So I think Juventus over the last 3 or 4 years have become maybe somewhat dull in terms of people watching from the outside always believe that they just win and it's not always entertaining. But Juventus have tried to make a shift this year, bringing Sarri in with the ability to create more attractive and good-looking football. And at the moment, that's doing well in terms of the style with substance. But if you look at the data itself, and the data doesn't necessarily lend itself to any major shift in terms of what Juventus have done over the last 3 seasons. So you see here on the screen, we've got the current Juventus team in the middle of this information here, and the reality is that there isn't a hell of a lot of difference in the data that's being produced. Yes, they pass the ball more. Yes, they have slightly more possession of the ball, but that would lend itself to most top leagues around the world where the better teams have more of the ball. They have the better players. There's a real standard line in terms of the quality and the completion rates in that possession side of things. There's an increase in the chances, but the data is pretty consistent over the last 3 seasons. The average chance count is a little bit higher, but the completion is varied over the last 3 seasons, as you'd expect in the hustle and bustle of Serie A.
Can I jump in with a question? Don't you think that maybe Sarri can't really adjust his style of play to the different teams like Allegri was doing previously? Because Sarri's beliefs often lead to that he wouldn't change something in game, and that would affect their performance and outcome of the game.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a bit of that. Obviously, last year at Chelsea, he struggled a little bit early on, trying to impose himself onto the side there, and I think he may have had similar issues at Juventus early season, but I think he's been smart enough in the last 10 games to adjust his system accordingly with something he's used. But the style itself, I don't think has changed a hell of a lot. Just the way they go about things in terms of building off that central pivot with Higuain has made a big difference to the way they've done things in the last 10 games.
And as we transition into talking about Juventus's weaknesses, Chris, let me ask you something. If you were a Juventus fan, would you rather have a team that plays beautiful football or a team that just relentlessly goes for the win at all costs?
Daniele, as I get in my August years, I come to appreciate beauty very much. And winning is lovely, but I think moments of beauty are the things that you remember the most. So I very much, and I value efficiency, but I think in life one could strive for beauty and hopefully be efficient every now and then. So that's what I think Juventus can do, and I think they're on the right pathway personally.
And maybe Juventus's attempt to play beautiful football will cause them to not win the league this year, because Lori has spotted some weaknesses in Juventus style of play this year. How about you unpack that, Lori, for us?
Yeah, we're going to focus on three different areas, but it might not be put as weaknesses, but as something that has made them maybe less efficient than last year. We're going to start off with their lack of clear wingers. Of course, that's before the 4-3-3 formation, but it's still they still have to adjust to that, and their efficiency in front of the goal has dropped because they use less passes, fewer amount of passes, of crosses, I'm sorry. And it has really affected their shot frequency and their they don't exploit that many areas anymore. They don't go that deep on the wings that often, just because there is no. They use Cuadrado, who most of the time played as a right back this season, and it really affected their performance in the final third. So compared to the other teams, they really dropped their crossing performance. Last year, they used around 20 crosses per game. Now they've dropped to 15, and I think that this shows in the games. Also, there's some fewer amount of long balls that they use, and I think that also affects their performance, because in the times where they're playing against teams with low block and it's hard to penetrate. These long balls previously were really helping them to send the ball behind the defense, and now the things look differently. Let's see the data from the last year. They used 47 long balls on average, and now they use 38, and this again shows on the pitch. And the last thing we're gonna cover is the shots on target against them, because that's something connected to their defensive performance. They have decreased their performance. They are forced into individual mistakes quite too often, and it really shows in the shots against on target, because now the teams are having better positions to shoot against them, just because they do a lot of individual mistakes. Last year, the shots against on target percentage was 27.7. Now it's 38.2. So that's a big difference. And all of these three, let's say, weaknesses could help Lazio in their road to the first place, because they managed to balance out these things in attack and defense compared to Juventus.
Yeah, let me ask you something, Steve. So we just said that Sarri's Juventus likes to play out of the back, so there are a lot more shorter passes. But Lori just pointed out that the crosses and the long balls have decreased. How much has the fact that Mandzukic is not on the roster anymore affected these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, for Mandzukic, you can replace him with Higuain, and you get a very similar type of central pivot there. But I think the long ball side of things is a testament to how much he wants the team to move together up the pitch, as opposed to potentially playing a little bit more direct a lot of the time. But I think that they've still been efficient in terms of the shots on target there. As you see, it's a higher number than it was the year before, and I think that's when they do create the chance, I think it's a much better chance than potentially they've created in the past.
Mm-hmm.
For the long balls, we're gonna discuss this when we talk about Dybala, but his movement is really affecting the use of long balls, and I'll tell you that later. And we have an example of Juve's decreased defensive awareness and their increase of individual errors, because when they are around the box, and that's a key area and very dangerous, and they could concede from that. They usually tend to their work under pressure is poor compared to last year, and these individual errors often result in the opposite players having really like nice areas to shoot from.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, you are currently talking about the goal that they considered against Hellas Verona. If I remember
Yes.
correctly, that goal originated from Rodrigo Bentancur's back heel, which caused
Yeah.
Juventus to lose possession in their third. And who was the score? Borini, I think, equalized the goal. And correct me if I'm wrong, did Verona go on to win that game?
I think so. My mind might be playing games with me, but yeah, you're right about Bentancur, and their decision making during defensive transitions has really been poor, and that resulted in a lot of conceding a lot of goals throughout the season.
Yeah, let's move on to talk about a player that was a little bit um, shadowed under Allegri, and he seems to now have come back to life. We're talking about Paulo Dybala. What has changed for the Argentine striker this season?
I think that he has flourished under Sarri, and of course, that's not the only reason. The new coach is not the only reason. He has the support of Ronaldo now, and it's really important for his movement, for his actions, and it has affected his performance a lot. We've pointed out a few areas he has improved in, and he has more freedom in the final third. He moves around. He's not limited to some areas. He exploits the half spaces. He can drop back and switch places with Ronaldo, which is really important and has helped him be more efficient in the final third. He has improved his special awareness and really moves really well and can see free spaces better and help his teammates too in that matter. And we can see his about his improved performance in the final third. We can see that the data from last year shows that he produced 2.6 shots per game on average, and now it has increased to 4.16. So that's a huge difference, and it shows that the more freedom he has, the better he performs. Also, seeing his movement and his hit maps, we can see that he stays in the box more frequently than before, and his touches in the box data shows the same. Previously, he had 2.3 touches in the box. Now it's 3.8, which is again a decent increase in terms of that. And also, he does more recoveries due to his improved positioning, and that, of course, helps the team gain back possession in the opposition final third, which is defensive third, which is really important, and they created a lot of chances from that. So um, I wanted to say also that he has a better decision making than before. He has helped a lot of his teammates, created chances for them, and we have an example where he can shoot from a quite a difficult angle, but he decides to pass the ball to his teammates and make a better chance for the team. So this improved decision making in terms of should I act like, should I score, try to score and put it on me, or just support the team and find a better position to expose the opponent.
And when Juventus switches to a 4-3-3, Steve, have you seen Dybala struggling with playing on that wide position as a winger?
Yeah, I think he struggled a little bit in that position, even though Sarri's allowed him to kind of come inside with the fullback going around him to create the width on that side. But I think he's been much more effective in that top of the diamond pivot position, where for the most part, if they're being combated by a midfield three, then the chances are that he's constantly the free man, as Laurie's given you the stats to back that up there. So it's created a lot more touches for him in the right areas of the pitch, but the wider he's gone, even though he's been successful there because of the weight of chances that the team have created, I think he's much more efficient in that top of the diamond for sure.
Mm-hmm. And if there is one player who seems to not have benefited as much from the new leadership by Sarri, that player will be World Cup champion Blaise Matuidi. So why has Matuidi underperformed so far this season, Laurie?
Yeah, we put him out there just because of course, his role is a bit different than under Allegri, but his data shows that he's underperforming in some other areas, and by his heat maps compared last seasons and this seasons, we can see that his movement is more limited, and he exploits less areas than before. Previously, he was going wider and covering the house spaces and going back to the fence and going to the edge of the final third. And we can see that now he's more focused on his actions between the central line and the edge of the final third, which has affected Juventus' performance during transitions and in defense too. He's not that effective as a counter-pressing option anymore, so that's really been affected their performance. And by his stats, we can see that he's doing less recoveries. His aerial performance has dropped too. And actually, we talked about the long balls, and he was one of the key players previously to send long balls and go past the defenses. And now his defensive his long ball performance has dropped too. Previously, he was sending around two long balls per game. Now it's dropped under one, and he's rarely sending any long balls. So that's really affecting Juventus transitions, build up, and actually the defensive transitions. So I think that his performance is really poor compared to his potential, because he can do much better than that.
Yeah, and I remember a quote from Massimilano Allegri from a couple of years ago. He said that on Monday morning, when he receives all the data from Juventus's analysts, he said that he only looked at two data: fouls committed and aerial duels won. So you telling us that Matuidi has dropped the winning rate of his aerial duels is definitely something that even Allegri will consider as a drop in performance from the French player.
It's really important because during transitions, it's the areas where you lose the aerial duels is key, because if you lose the duel in the central midfield, it will cost the team a lot, and they may not be able to go back quickly, and it will affect their defensive actions.
And it will be harder also to pick up the second balls. A key
Yeah,
part,
for sure.
part of the game. So why don't we move on to some fun? And our analysts put together a pre-COVID best 11. So who wants to start us off with this magnificent lineup?
I'm talking too much, but maybe we should start from the goalkeeper and go up front, because there are some really amazing players that we've picked. Um, I've picked the goalkeeper, which is Thomas Strakosha from Lazio, and I've picked him because he's been very solid throughout the season. He's kind of um, opponent of Szczesny in that matter, but why I've picked Strakosha instead of Szczesny is because he's really good in saving balls from outside the box. And it's really important these days because teams more and more often try shooting from outside the box, because the defenses are stronger and they can penetrate in their usual ways using through balls or whatever. So that's why I've picked Strakosha. For the left back, in the 4-3-3 formation, I've picked Alexandru. As I've mentioned earlier, he's very important for advancing the ball, for holding on to the ball and keeping the possession and delivering it to the final third. So that's why I've picked him for the dream team. Uh, in the central back positions, I've picked Jose Luis Palomino from Atalanta. From what I've seen from him, he's very solid in terms of recoveries. He's been a key man for Atalanta in that area. He's doing an outstanding 14.02 recoveries per game, which is amazing, outstanding data. And he's very defending very well against skillful players. His performance against Inter was very, very good because he managed to limit Lukaku's movement, which is really hard. He has an outstanding off the ball movement and physicality, and Palomino managed to stop that, which was very interesting. And also, he's really good in the air, and his contribution in attacking set pieces has been outstanding. The next central back is Francesco Acerbi. He's been very solid defensively. He does intercept the ball often, and I think he really will contribute well to that dream team. Let's say on the right back, I've picked Marco Faraoni from Verona because he has been a very complex player. I know he plays more as a right wing back because they play often with a back three, but I've put him here because he brings out a balance between attack and defense, and has helped the team a lot during transitions. And I think he's should be a player to be looked upon.
Yeah, Steve, I wanted to ask you something. What are two changes that you will make in this back four / keeper?
Oh, to be honest, I'm pretty happy with where it is. Maybe Cuadrado in at right back maybe would be one. But other than that, I'm fairly comfortable with where it is, to be honest.
Okay, I have a couple names I would like to throw out. I like Leonardo Bonucci. His playmaking duties are just key. And then I would also like to include one of the Inter center backs. This year playing with 3 center backs under Conte, I think it helped them a lot. So I'm gonna go with Skriniar.
I'd
I
pick
take
Chiellini,
that.
even though he's injured as well.
Yeah.
I can take Skriniar because he's been very important for Inter too. But yeah, I was considering Cuadrado too, but as I said, I think Ferroni is a more complex player, whilst Cuadrado, for example, is more attack oriented. So yeah, that's why I picked Ferroni.
Fair
And
enough.
for me to finish with my picks for the central midfield, I've picked Fabian Ruiz from Napoli. Because he's been outstanding this season for the team, maybe one of their key players. He's very good at ball progression. His pass accuracy rate is outstanding. I think it's something around 91%, which is amazing. He really supports the team in the midfield area, but also provides a lot of key passes to the final third and creates many chances for his team. When that's why I picked him.
Fair enough. And Steve, why don't you complete the lineup for us?
Yeah, sure. So my front five begins with the two guys in midfield. So Gomez and Ilicic from Atalanta. So Gomez is a personal favourite of mine, but he didn't get in just because of that. He's obviously one of the most creative forces in the league right now. So when you consider both open play and set pieces, he's fourth overall in assists per 90 minutes. And also where they've played him a little bit deeper this year, he's currently sat in the top five for the progressions of the ball from deep positions per 90 minutes, which is just over 10. So he's had a great output so far this year. And then Ilicic alongside him, he's been the only player in the league with combined scoring contribution of above one, other than Immobile, who we'll talk about soon. But he's also top, or at least in the top five of nearly every Serie A individual offensive leaderboard right now. So I don't think there's a more efficient and better midfielder in the league right now than Ilicic, to be fair. Onto the front three. So I tried to steer away from a lot of the bigger names. It would have been too easy potentially to select some of those. So a couple of left field selections. So Martinez from Inter down the right hand side. So first full season playing in a top five league, but he's in the top 10% for shots on target and touches inside the box per 90 minutes. And also probably on the other side of things, when you consider how little Lukaku offers to a defensive organisation of Conte's, he contributes a hell of a lot to their press, which is a big part of their game, obviously. So he goes in on the right wing, and then on the other side, Domenico Berardi from Sassuolo. He averages just over 0.66 goals per 90 minutes, which is the top three output in the league. He's a third best league scoring contribution for goals and assists, which is brilliant from a wide player. And even though he's not a great dribbler, he still manages to get a decent number of fouls, which is obviously important in that side of things. And then leading the line, Immobile from Lazio, 20 odd goals so far this year, relentless in front of goal. Only Higuain averages more open play assists than him as well per 90 minutes. So he goes in and leads the line for me to complete the team.
Chris, are you surprised to not see Cristiano Ronaldo on this lineup?
I know that there are lovers and haters, and nothing in between. I am struck by the number of Argentinians that are in Serie A, and I wonder how that front line, particularly of Juventus, has benefited from having Argentinians there. So I don't know. I thought I'd just throw that out to the group about that seemingly Italian-Argentinian connection.
There definitely is a connection, and you can tell if you follow players like Dybala and Higuain on social media. They're always seen with the mate, the typical Argentine drink.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure there is big chemistry. But yeah, you're right. The Argentine players seem to find a lot of success in the Italian league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that Gomez is not far away from the mentioned players, because he's been outstanding in the last few seasons. I really like that Steve has picked him for his dream team, because he's very important for the team, and I think that in our future episodes, it's worth discussing Atalanta and these players because they have created something very impressive under the current coach.
Well, good. Well, that wraps up our show. We'd like to thank Total Football Analysis. They are the world's largest open source soccer analytics community. Please visit www.totalfootballanalysis.com.
And signore e signori, thank you for listening. That's all for our first podcast show about the Serie A. We would like to thank Enrico Italian Bistro for their support, as well as the NCFC and NC Cord soccer clubs. See you soon. A presto. Ciao.